grateful and thankful to be here on the first day of Advent. It's really an honor. For me, Advent is such a time to be able to rev up my spiritual practice. And I usually do have spiritual practice throughout the year, but throughout Lent, and specifically on my way to Christmas, I rev it up. And to be able to give you this message today of faith and hope, which is how we're starting the first day of Advent, it's truly an honor and a privilege. But first, let's talk about my wardrobe today. So I was here a few weeks ago, and I was wearing, for those that you were here, I was wearing a green dress, remember, matching the chairs. Then this morning, I get here, and Reverend Eileen has black on, and the musicians have black on. I'm like, what is happening? Woo! But the funny thing is, I asked my son this morning, I said, like I said last time, how does mommy look? I always like to get his feedback. He goes, oh, mom, you look so beautiful. And then I could see him hugging me and then starting to touch my tummy like this. He's like, mommy, you have a baby. And I'm sure a lot of women could relate to this. You know, we're just a little bit heavier on the bottom. I've never been the one to have like those natural six-pack and that stomach that's just inside. I mean, I don't understand it. I wish I did. I really hope for that this Advent season. But haven't you seen these people that naturally have a six-pack? Come on, what happened to me? So I thought it was so sweet, and all I could think is Byron Katie, her quote. She says, "The way I look blesses the world." And I think that that's such a beautiful thing to say, the way I look blesses the world. And I was thinking, I feel that exactly the way I look blesses the world, just like the way that you look blesses the world. And there's a reason why we look the way we look. And it's the comparison that makes us stuck, right? So as I was wearing the dress and I was driving, I was just so grateful because now that I'm about 60 years old now, just kidding. Going into my 50s, I feel very comfortable in my body, and it's taken me time to be able to feel that comfort. And when my son said that, it was just so sweet to not personalize it and to understand that we're exactly perfect the way we are. And speaking of which, I was actually this weekend doing some research and prep on the talk, and our founder, Charles Fillmore, he was such a pioneer for who we are in truth, for affirming our truth, for really waking up that divine Christ consciousness. And as we go into Christmas, there's this understanding that as we go through the weeks of the seasons of every Sunday with faith and hope and peace and love and joy, we are preparing ourselves for the understanding, the realization of the Christ that exists in each and every one of us. And unity teaches us that the Christ is in each and every one of us, and Jesus was the example of that. He lived those characteristics to the max. Right? He really embodied them. He embodied forgiveness. He embodied the miracle. And Charles Fillmore was also extremely good at focusing on the good, on the holy, on our perfection. And I found something, and I was for 2 or 3 hours reading this and just reading about Charles Fillmore because I was captivated. He did a broadcast on January 24th, 1923. And it was called Christ Mind, the Second Coming of Christ. And I'm going to go ahead and show, and this is what he said on the radio. He quoted this. Christ in me is a new consciousness of life. Christ in me is a new consciousness of strength. Christ in me is a new consciousness of health. And now, he also said this one. Christ in me is a new consciousness of abundance, of riches, opulence, prosperity. Everything is mine in the Christ. And it was so powerful because what he was saying on this broadcast, and again, this was a very long time ago, it was in I have dyslexia, so I have to make sure here. I could probably say 2023, but 1923, he said this in the broadcast. And all he kept on saying throughout the broadcast is our perfection. And talking about our perfection and our perfect health, our perfect wealth, our opulence. I had to chat GPT that opulence because I wasn't sure what that was. But it's about luxury. It's about just the divine expressing through us in a luxurious way and having everything and lacking nothing. And after he says these affirmations, one of the things that touched me, and I actually started crying on my couch just of love, is after he says these affirmations is, this is your privilege. This is your privilege. Basically saying, this is the truth. So we'll say this together this morning, and we can put them up on the screen again. Christ in me is a new consciousness of life. Christ in me is a new consciousness of strength. The Christ in me is a new consciousness of health. Christ in me is a new consciousness of abundance, riches, opulence, prosperity. Everything is mine in the Christ. And that is your privilege. Can you feel that? It is. And the reason it's our privilege is because who our Father is, our Father, Mother, God is, our divine, where we come from. That Christ consciousness within us, we are these things, and it appears that we have forgotten. As Redland Eileen was saying earlier about how in the Christian religion we celebrate Advent. It comes from the Italian word adventus. And we're coming into this Advent season with hope and faith. And usually in the Christian churches, they just do the hope part. But here at Unity, we ignite it with some faith, baby. We give it some faith. We give it some we give it that trust. Because we can be hopeful, but that could be a little bit contradictory, right? Because you can hope for things. But then there's that cuckoo mind, right, that I talk about, the egoic mind, that we can hope for things, but we're not sure if they'll come about, or we're abundance, but we're worried about money, or we want our health, but we're concerned about our health. So we're hopeful that our health is good, although there's this continuum between hope and faith. It goes together. And Hebrews 11:1 says, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. That means that faith is the substance, the certainty that transforms hope into reality. So you all know I'm all about stories and practicality. How can we experience this in our lives, right? So we know that hope is hoping, wishing for something, and faith is that trust, that faith that it will come to pass. But that faith is very powerful because that faith is really trusting that everything will work out for the highest good. It's really having that trust. No control, no manipulation. You don't do that, right? No control, no manipulation? No, not at all. This is why the faith and the hope is so important. Because we let go of that control and manipulation as best as we can. We're human. We want things. We hope for things to happen. Although ultimately we don't know what's the highest and best. And that is good news because we let God, Father, Mother, God, do its work. We don't need the God complex anymore. It's too much. Let God play God. Let the Christ in you play the Christ in you. Live and dwell in the Christ in you. And I have a beautiful story of hope and faith that I want to take you on a journey with me. I was very hopeful, and I'm going to give this example. My first marriage ended in divorce in 2009. And I was very hopeful after that I would meet a partner, get married again, and eventually have children. This was in my mid-30s. So I was very hopeful to find someone. I really desired, I had my ministry at Unity of Burbank at the time in California. I wanted to enjoy my ministry with a partner, with someone. So I decided to go on the dating apps because I was hopeful. Right? It's hoping. So you have to do something when you're hoping. So at the time it was the match.com, right? You have all kinds of them. And then you have the swipe the left and the swipe the right and the up and down, and you have a match. I was very hopeful. It was a disaster. It was one nightmare after another. But I was hopeful, right? And I remember talking to my mom, and she was living at the time, and I was talking to her about these dates I was having, and all she kept on saying is that, what is wrong? What's happening? I was like, Mom, I don't know, but it's not working out. So this is when we begin to have faith, when we give it over to Spirit. I don't know what is the highest and best. I sit with the Holy Spirit through this time of Advent. It's a good time for spiritual practice to sit with Spirit and ask for guidance. What is the highest and best for me? I remember Spirit saying, there is no man in sight, because every time you just forget about me. And the children you have are the children and who you're mothering at church. Who you're mothering at church, those are your children right now. And you're not supposed to have anybody in your life. So what I did is I had to start to have faith, to have deep trust. Am I supposed to have a child in this lifetime? I don't know. And my job is to say, am I going to have one? Good. If I'm not going to have one, good. If I'm going to get married, good. If I'm not going to get married, good. That is our job. So I was just trust. So I came into what I call, this was in 2016. It was my birthday, October 15th. I'm never going to forget it. I declared it my flirty 40s. I wrote in my journal. I wished it. I had hope for it. I had faith in it. I declared that this year, somehow, I will meet a partner. And before this, at the time, there was like no man in sight. So I was thinking maybe I'll adopt or do other measures to have this hope come alive. Right? So in my journal, I said, okay, I won't go this route yet. I will have faith and hope, and I'll write it in the journal. So I did. I wrote in the journal, I hope to bring in my partner, to have a child, and I give it over. And that was October 15th, 2016. So then I come into, juicy story, huh? You like it, huh? I know, I'm getting excited. What's going to happen? So I come into February, and my book was about to come out. My first book, Live Your Happy, was about to come out in April. I was speaking in Pacific Palisades in California. Ironically enough, the retreat was called the Happy Dream Retreat. And I would be the speaker there. And I walked in the Happy Dream Retreat, and there was a volunteer there. And this volunteer, we would have a connection. And I had been told by a psychic, not that I usually believe these things, but that I was going to meet my partner related to my book, which I thought I would meet a very intellectual man with a suit, at the bookstore or something. That's what I thought it looked like, right? So I come into this retreat, and I see this person in front with a bun in the hair. And she said, when you see him, you'll recognize him. I said, okay. So I sat down, and I felt a connection. I felt that there was something there. And then he turned around, and I was like, oh, no. That's not it. That can't be him, even though I felt a connection because of the way he looked, the bun in the hair, the height, the age, everything. But what would happen, and I'm going to make this story short, is that we would come together in February. We had a connection. We ended up, he's German, so he ended up going home. He came back. We did a nice book launch of my book, a party. We decided we will go on book tour together, but we had such a connection. And again, there's such faith. You know, in life, when you want something or you desire something and it comes into your life and things are just happening and you're just taken. You can't say yes, you can't say no. It's like you're on the sleigh with Santa and you can't stop, right? It's like you're on. That's how it felt. It felt that it was so God-guided that we met in February, we got engaged in April, and we were married in May. And I was expecting my son in July. No, I was pregnant with my son in July. Not expecting. That would be fast. That was, I love it. That was fast. Oh, that's really fast. So let's just, so it's February we met, April we got engaged, May we got married, in July we found out we were expecting our son. And the reason I get emotional is because of that faith that I had. And the trust that I had, how it all came together because of that trust, that deep trust in God. And it was a miracle because I got pregnant at 40 and I had my son at 41. And I'll have Christian get up and we'll, thank you, honey. My husband's here today, actually. Yes. So it's also, it's a story of, and the reason I want to share that story is a story of letting go. It's a story of what we think is the highest and best, right? And now we have Ari. He's 6 years old. You'll see him running around today. He's here as well. Just so grateful for that faith, that trust, at letting go that day in October and just saying, I have no idea. I don't know what's the highest and best. So I invite you to think about, and I know that coming into the holiday season, it could be challenging for many of us. We can stand up here and sing, and I can speak this message to you, although I feel you, and I know that maybe some of you aren't going through the best time right now. Or as we come into the holidays, there might be worries. I know that each and every one of us has our own issues, trials, and tribulations, and things that are going on in your life right now. And I just want to know that you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. And in this space, that's when you get to remember that you're not alone. And that what this Advent season can do for you is that you can begin to have and grow that faith within that hope. As you come into Reverend Eileen with the next 2 Sundays, as she brings you this message of peace, of love. And I'll come in and I'll speak about joy. But don't wait for Sunday to start living this. Start to come into your life and say, I am willing to live these attributes. So the characteristics that we're going through on Sundays are basically the characteristics that you want to practice and come into in your life. So this week, how can I be more hopeful, more faithful? How can I trust more? How can I get more out of my own way? How can I let go of the control, the manipulation? How can I start to rev up my practice? My talk today is let it shine. Let yourself shine. Time to shine. The time has come to shine. So the question is, are you ready to shine? Are you ready to shine? Last time I was here, I talked about my father, that he committed suicide when I was 3 months old, and I shared the letter I wrote to him. Many of you were here for that. And it was very touching and moving. I had a lot of people come up to me, but what I didn't get the chance to say is that when I was about 3 years old, my mom met a gentleman. His name is Pablo Sosa, which is now my stepfather and has been my stepfather since I was 3 years old. And he has been such a beacon of light and hope for me, always had so much faith in me. And it's funny because he's here today, and as I was coming up here, he said, go get him. And that just reminded me of the light. So I just want to acknowledge my father here today. So the reason I wanted to say that is even though he wasn't my biological father, I was his daughter. And love is love, and love is love, no matter what. And that means a lot to me too. It gives me just that faith that he had in me. All my life growing up, I was his little girl. There was no me doubting it, just knowing I was his little girl. And as Charles Fillmore speaks to us and has spoke through us throughout, and his wife, Myrtle Fillmore, throughout the unity conversation of just affirmation. That's what my father did for me. It was constant affirmation of how wonderful, how successful I'll be. He would say I was going to be a millionaire. I'm still waiting for that part. Still waiting. But I feel like a millionaire. I feel that's what success is the peace and love and joy. And to be able to stand here and share with you a message on the first day of Advent is everything. It makes me feel that opulence. It makes me feel that Christ consciousness. So the question is, I ask you this morning, as I do every Sunday I'm here, usually, is, are you ready? That is the question. I mean, seriously, really? Yes. Okay, good. So today, I want you to remember the service and just remember you saying that yes. So when you are at that party and you're making the turkey and, your mother-in-law's coming in, maybe you don't like her that much. She walks in and you're just in the unity principle mindset and you forgive it. You see the truth of her. You walk in and you say, how can I be the love? How can I be the joy this holiday season throughout the thing? And focus, you focus on the to-do list, but I want you to remember to focus on the love-do list. The love-do list. What does love do? What does love say? And I know we're going to forget. I forget too. We're going to forget. We're going to get amnesia. Right? We're just going to go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Not the cereal, as I like to say. You're just going to forget who you are. And then guess what happens? You get to remember. You get to show yourself grace. It's not going to be perfect cheerleader happiness all the time. That's not what I'm teaching. What I'm teaching is be yourself and stuff will happen. But what makes the difference is you igniting that Christ consciousness and you activating in a way that is so powerful that the light shines and you live that light that is in God, that is connected to all of us. And you get to be in that doctor's office and you get to remember that light. You are in a confrontation with someone and you get to remember that light. You get to be at home, maybe you're sad, maybe you're down, but you remember that light. You have that faith, you have that hope, knowing who your Father, Mother, God is. And the reminder of what Charles Fillmore said about that Christ consciousness being born in you. And we're going to go into prayer now in closing, so I'll have you come up for the piano. But before that, let's go ahead and put the slides one more time. Christ in me is a new consciousness of life. Christ in me is a new consciousness of strength. Christ in me is a new consciousness of health. Christ in me is a new consciousness of abundance, riches, opulence, prosperity. Everything is mine in the Christ. And that is your privilege. That is your privilege. Let's pray. As we close the eyes, we take in this message of truth, of Christ consciousness, remembering who we are. Faith is assurance of things hoped for. This means faith is a substance, a certainty that transforms hope into reality. The time has come to shine that light. So this morning, I want you to make a promise to yourself that you will start to practice these divine characteristics that are within you and allowing them to be born in you each week of this Advent season. You're so worthy of that. So at this time, I want you to think of anything that is taking your peace and happiness and keeping it at arm's length, and just give it over. Give it over to Spirit and have faith and trust that whatever you want, whatever you need, whatever you hope for is coming to you. It's here for you now. Maybe you didn't believe it before, but now you're open to that faith and hope. So just make that promise to yourself now in the silence. All together, amen. Thank you, everyone. It was an honor and it was a privilege. You may open your eyes.